Hello everyone, this is Jacob Hobio, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, Jan delivers a speech to the military personnel at the 178th Fighter Wing in Springfield, Ohio. He spoke as a part of a new initiative titled The Duality of Leadership, How to Lead Your Followers and Follow Your Leaders. His speech covers followership. Tune in next week to hear about leadership by retired Brigadier General Richard Green. If you want to support us, there are two ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/The Apex Podcast. The other is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
All right, so to start out, like we said, there's going to be two different sides to the presentation, right? So the first half of this was focused on the leadership side. The second half will be something on that we're developing called followership, right? So a lot of people talk about leadership, but there's a second half that I think gets really under-addressed. Okay, so this presentation is called Follow the Leader, How to Avoid Toxic Followership. Okay, next slide, please. So who am I? All right, my name's Jan, looks like Jan, pronounced like you're about to fall asleep. Almasy, I am a bachelor's degree in nursing with a minor in psychology because I got bored in school and decided that for whatever reason I needed to pick up some extra credit hours. I'm an intensive care float nurse. Me and Mr. Jacob Popio here started a leadership podcast called The Apex. And then I'm also the NCOIC of student flight at the 179th Airlift Wing. So a lot of the ideas that you're going to hear today have stemmed from things that I've seen mentoring those young airmen, trainees, coming into the Guard. I'm going to kind of apply it back and forth to both the civilian side and the military side, okay? So my personal time, a little bit of a fitness junkie, not by any means anything crazy. I did sign up for a triathlon this year. Hopefully that goes good. I love reading, and I'm a bourbon collector. I like collecting specific types of bourbon and whiskeys, Jack Daniels, Buffalo Trace, and I also enjoy consuming it on occasion, preferably after drill weekends, try to relax after those busy days. Next slide, please. So why the title? Okay, I kind of already mentioned this, that a lot of people focus on leadership, right? But the majority of us spend the majority of our lives somewhere on a spectrum, right? We're leading certain groups of people, but we also have to follow people above us, right? And sometimes we can't always lead the way that we would like to because there's people above us in the chain of command, and there's also people below us that have responsibilities, that we have a responsibility to lead, okay? So in order to learn how to lead, you must first master how to follow. And we'll kind of put those puzzle pieces together as we go through this presentation. If you want independence, this is big, okay? If you want independence, you have to earn the trust of your leadership. Okay, my mom would always get on me like crazy when I was a kid for not cleaning my room, okay? The easiest way that I found to get her to stop nagging me about cleaning my room, it's so dirty in there, I can't find anything. I'm like, Mom, that paper's right there underneath that stack of clothes. I know exactly where it's at. If you move things, I'm not gonna know where anything is. What I ended up finding out is if I just did it before she asked me, a couple of months later, she wasn't bugging me about it anymore, right? I earned the trust that the room was gonna be clean, so she didn't even inspect it anymore.
Will you come talk to my kid?
Yes, ma'am. That sounds like a plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is followership? I have three different scenarios up here that we'll go over, but the first one is an orchestra. How many people in here play a musical instrument? Anybody? Your voice counts. None? Piano, guitar, even if you just dabbled, sir? Okay. Saxophone. My mom plays the saxophone. I wish I could play sax. That's a beautiful instrument. I play piano and guitar, okay? I also played in the Canton Youth Symphony Orchestra when I was a kid. I played the tuba, right? One thing that I really, really admired in the orchestra, or anytime I was involved in band, or choir, I sang a cappella for close to a decade, was those people, whether they're a bass, they're a tenor, they're a soprano, they're a tuba player, clarinet player, any of the above, they were so good at what they did that they were masters in their section, right? They were a master clarinet player, but if that person were to try to pick up a tuba, it wouldn't go well. but they all submitted themselves to the conductor in order to create a beautiful product, right? So they're all masters of their individual lanes. They spend hours practicing to get their craft down to a T, but in the end, they all work together to create a beautiful piece of music, okay? That's kind of how it works on the ICU. As an ICU nurse, you know, I kind of say we're the final line of defense to keep doctors from killing people. That's kind of a joke, right? But the majority of the time, they're so bogged down with so many patients, they have so many things going on that sometimes orders get miswritten, things get put in on the wrong patient, and it's up to the nurse's job to catch the doctor's mistakes, pharmacy's mistakes, PTOT's mistakes. We're like the last line of defense to the patient, right? So it's a totally different type of followership. We're supposed to follow orders, but in the end, if we carry out an order that causes harm to the patient, it's on us, right? So instead of being in the orchestra where you just all collaborate to create this beautiful piece of music, you add someone's life into the mix, and it creates a totally different dynamic. Everyone's a lot more stressed, they're a lot more focused on what's gonna happen next. Okay, and that's kind of where we get into the military. The military and the healthcare field I've found are very, very similar. Okay, our officers in the military are a lot like our physicians in the healthcare field. They provide orders for people below them in the chain of command to carry out. Okay? Just like in the healthcare field, the nurses I look at as the NCOs. The nurses, the respiratory therapists, all of these licensed personnel, physical therapists, they're all NCOs. We get a set of orders, and we're supposed to carry it out on the patient. I say, you know, that the nurses are with the patient 23/6. That other day and an hour are dedicated for the physician. But we're in there constantly working with the patients and in collaboration with the physicians and in collaboration with all these other people to keep somebody alive, especially in the intensive care setting. Right. Military side, people's lives are also on the line. Whether you're in logistics, you're in intel, you're in ops, security forces, your Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, any of these branches, jobs, divinations have lives on the line, have supplies on the line. There's a lot of different pieces that go into the puzzle to create a beautiful piece of music. So when a unit is functioning cohesively and everybody's bought in and everybody's operating at peak proficiency, it's a pretty cool thing. We can get a lot of crap done, right? Next slide. So there's a couple of types of power here that I want to talk about. And really, I'm just using this to preface the rest of the followership side. So this will be a little bit of audience interaction. If nobody raises their hand, it's going to get really awkward because I'm willing to stand here quiet until someone does. All right, so reward power. In the yellow, right, positive reinforcement power. Anybody have any idea what that could be in a military setting or a civilian setting? Who would have reward power over another person? What does that mean? Come on, anybody. I'll give you the first one, but we'll move on to the second one, and someone better raise their hand. I see a smirk there. What are you thinking, ma'am?
Maybe like a supervisor, somebody in a ward directory.
There we go, perfect. See how easy that was? Okay, so a supervisor that has the power to, you know, you pass a PT test, here's a 2-hour pass, high five, right? That's reward power. You have the power to motivate somebody because they know that they have the potential to earn something from you because you have the authority to give them a reward, right? All right, so coercive power. I'm gonna kind of just talk about this one because it's basically the opposite of reward power. I'm trying to think of the word here. The power that we have as leaders, right, is both positive and negative, right? It's kind of the whole give somebody a cookie versus using a squirt bottle kind of conditioning, right? So if you give someone a cookie, that's a reward that motivates them positively to go do something. If you do that too much, they're going to expect a cookie every single time, and then eventually you run out of cookies, okay? If you use the spray bottle over and over again, you just spray them in the face every time they do something bad, yeah, they might be motivated, but then every time you get out the Windex, they're going to freak out, and eventually you'll run out of water, and you're not spraying anything. They're going to get so used to punishment that they're no longer motivated by it. So there has to be a dichotomous balance between reward and punishment. All right, legitimate power. Up in yellow it says positional power. Who wants to try to chime in on that one? It says it in the yellow, positional. What does that mean?
Where you're at in the chain of command.
Beautiful. So it's where you're at in the chain of command, right? As a staff and as head of the NCOIC of student flight, I report directly to my squadron commander. Okay? So I have to get things approved through him because he has legitimate power over me. He has positional power, right? This is probably the weakest form of power, in my opinion. A lot of people look at it as the strongest, but I think in a lot of situations, if you rely on your rank over and over and over again, it's not going to work out. I think every single time you have to pull rank to get somebody to do something, you've already lost that person's buy-in, right? And sometimes you have to, because you just have to get crap done sometimes. If it's a dead-end situation, we have to get this done. Sometimes you just pull rank and say, don't ask questions right now, I can explain later, but we got to do this. Referential power, this is one that I believe is one of the most powerful. Okay, this is, I call it role model power. It's when you have the ability to have a group of people looking up to you, that they want to emulate you because you're leading by example, that you become a role model and they want to follow you because of how powerful of a leader you are. Okay, you're walking the walk. You're talking the talk. If there's a job that's crappy that you're telling them to do, you're taking off your blouse and getting down in the dirt with them. They start looking up to you and you're like, I want to be like that guy or girl someday. That's especially prevalent, I think, in the younger airmen coming in, the trainees or entry-level employees in a corporation. Hey, expert power, this one I call nerd power, right? I'm a huge nerd. I love reading constantly. Obviously, I picked up the psych minor for no apparent reason. But if you're such an expert in your field, you have the ability to have other people coming up to you and be like, hey, I hear you're the SME, right? The subject matter expert. I'm going to go ask this person a question about X, Y, or Z because I know that they're going to be able to know the answer, and if not, they can find it in a reg. That's a lot of responsibility, and sometimes it can wear you out because you constantly have people dinging your phone, bombarding you because they know that you've got the nerd power to figure out how to fix their problem. Okay? I feel that pain in personnel all the time. Informational power. Anybody know what KFC's secret spices are? Hopefully not. They wouldn't be secret anymore, right? Okay? So informational power means that you have information that other people might not have. Okay? This is a cop-out form of power, in my opinion. If you have information on how to better a process and you're unwilling to share it because of lack of confidence, lack of competence, or lack of caring about your people, that's bad. You're so afraid of them becoming better that you're not willing to let go of something that could increase the productivity of your organization. Right? If KFC gave up their secret spices, I could make their chicken in my kitchen. Probably not because I'm a horrible cook, but I could at least give it a shot. They have to hold on to that secret recipe in order to keep their informational power, to keep customers coming back, et cetera, et cetera. Same for Popeye, same for any organization that relies on a recipe, right? And some squadrons have a good recipe, but they're unwilling to share it because they don't want other people to outperform them. Next slide, please. All right, so there's 3 groups here, right? I want you guys to picture this in your heads. Because I hear all the time, leadership, 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 right? But I'm a firm believer that if there's a whole bunch of chiefs and no Indians, nothing gets done. So if there's group A, right? Say we have to get a rock from this table to this table, okay? Group A is all leaders, right? $5, they all stand here. Maybe there's like a group of 4 of us, right? Arguing about what the best possible and most efficient way is to get the rock from that table to that table. Because they're all leaders, they all believe they should be the ones in charge, They all start butting heads trying to figure out where they're at on the alpha totem pole, and then the rock never gets moved. Or it might get moved, and it'll just take a while. On the contrary, you've got a group of all followers, okay? They're going to stand in the group like this, waiting for somebody to take charge, right? And most of the time, if you're in a group of all followers, those passive personalities, someone's going to get voluntold to take charge because nobody else wants to do it, so they're just going to point the finger at the guy to their right or the girl to their left, and then kind of kick them into the middle of the circle and say, all right, you lead. And then eventually that rock will get moved, right? But if you happen to foster an organization where you have leaders and followers, that's a beautiful thing about a chain of command, is that if you have a master sergeant surrounded by a group of A1Cs, that master can be like, all right, you two grab that side of the rock, you two grab this side of the rock, I'll kind of make sure that nobody gets hurt, we'll guide it over, set it down, 30 seconds, it's done. Because you have one person willing to step up and lead and care about their people, care about the outcome, and then the other ones are willing to follow. Does that make sense? See some nods? Okay. Next slide. All right. So the general just talked about how to be a good leader, right? I'm going to talk about how to be a good follower. Now, I did not come up with these. I stole these from the Ivy League Business Journal because in reality, I'm really not that smart of a dude. I just listen to really smart people and kind of just mirror out what they say, right? So first, judgment and work ethic. Now, I'm not talking judgment like you're judging somebody's outfit because they don't match, or negative judgment, right? I'm talking about judgment behind making decisions. And judgment, just like in the orchestra, practicing your instrument requires time and time again practicing good judgment. Right? We all know people that are really intellectual, but for some reason, they make really dumb choices when it comes to common sense, right? See some nods? So those people have not mastered good judgment. When you're put in a position where you have to make a decision, 15 seconds or less, sometimes people freeze up because they haven't put themselves in positions where they've been forced to make those judgmental decisions and decisive judgmental decisions. And it does take practice to make those good choices. Work ethic. I'm not really going to explain that one a whole lot because I think it's self-explanatory. You should have an internal drive to get stuff done. I remember when I was a kid, my grandpa, I grew up on a farm, so my grandpa was like, okay, you can go visit your friend if you clean out, we had goats at the time, if you clean out the goat stall before you leave. Like, all right, Grandpa. So I go out there, half-ass it, right? There's still a little bit of hay on the ground, some pellets, whatever else. So he comes out and he looks at it. He's like, well, that's BS. He's like, now you're not going to go to your friend's house. You're going to stay here and redo the barn. Whereas if I would have went out there the first time, had a good work ethic, and really cleaned it to par the first time around, I probably would have been able to go to my friend's house, maybe a little bit late, but I would have been able to spend time there. So one thing that he always told me is whether you're shining a doorknob or you're sweeping a floor, someone should be able to eat off of that floor. You should be able to see your reflection in that doorknob. You need to take pride in what you do, regardless of how menial the tasks may seem. Because if people can't trust you with the little stuff, they're never going to be able to trust you with the big stuff. All right, competence and honesty. We kind of hit on competence for the leadership side, but competence is also important as followers. If our leaders can't trust us to do our jobs correctly, that's how you get micromanaged. And how many people love doing their jobs when you feel someone's breath on your ear? Horrible. I can't stand being micromanaged. It drives me crazy. I actually really don't like being told what to do, which is ironic because I joined the military. But you find out that if you become competent in your position and so competent and good at it, they become a subject matter expert. You get some of that knowledge power, that informational power, some of that expert power. That micromanaging starts to go away because they know that they can count on you if times get tough. Honesty. This is big on two different spectrums, okay? I'm I'm going to kind of tie it into this discretion and loyalty at the bottom with the second one. But the first thing that we'll say about honesty is being honest about when you fail. Okay, a lot of times people are afraid to admit that they have hit a deficit or that they are feeling weak, they're feeling vulnerable. There's something going on in their lives that are causing them to underperform. Or they're not honest on whether they know how to do a task. You know, I walk up to someone, I'm like, hey, I need you to get this done. They look at me and they're like, yes, Staff Sergeant. And then I walk away, and if I didn't follow up with them or check in on them, then I come back and they're standing there with the shovel trying to figure out what hole I told them to dig or, you know, something. But if I would have explained it a little bit better, or they would have been honest with me, be like, sir, I'm not really getting what you're saying. Could you explain that a little bit further or tell me why we need to get this done? You know, having the ability to be honest about the fact that you don't understand something is really important too. Just as much as being honest when you do something good. Okay? It's really hard for some people to talk about the positives that they do, but it's also really important. It's what defines your careers, both your failures and your successes. Okay? You can't have, you know, this is very cliche, but I'll use it. You can't have light without the darkness, right? So unless people know about both sides, it's kind of hard to put together the whole piece of the puzzle. Courage. This kind of really ties in with your leaders, right? It takes a lot of cojones to stand up in front of somebody, say they're, you know, an officer, and you're underneath their chain of command and be like, sir, I'm not really sure if that's a good idea. Or, you know, I've got a better way to do that. Ma'am, you know, I know you've been working on this for a little while, but I kind of see a hole here. Maybe we should fix that. And you have to be able to balance that relationship and do it tactfully, right? You can't just walk up and be like, this plan is crap. That's not going to go over well, right? If you're like, ma'am, I think that, you know, I really enjoy this plan. I've got a little bit of civilian experience here. I was wondering if you could look over and see, you know, maybe I could help contribute to making this more efficient. That goes over way different than this plan is crap, right? Discretion. This is something that's important when you become close with a leader above you in the chain of command. Leaders have faults, right? If they choose to divulge those faults to you, this is where discretion and loyalty come in. You know, I've had many conversations with my chiefs, my LTs, some of the captains that I'm friends with, and even the lieutenant colonel that is, you know, in command of my squadron about issues that they're having. And it's more of a venting session than anything, right? But I'm not going to run over to Susie and be like, you won't believe what they said, right? It's my responsibility now as a follower to understand that they trusted me with that information, potentially because they're looking for me for mentorship, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. But if they believe that you may have something to offer, sometimes people offer you their faults in order to hope that you may offer a solution to them. And it's up to you to exercise that discretion and that loyalty to differentiate between, is this a fault that I need to report? Are they going to do something so crazy that everything's going to go off the chains? Or is it something that maybe me and them can have a couple of conversations and it'll work out? Maybe I can offer them some things. There's some things in my civilian career that I've encountered that'll really help them get to the next level. And finally, in all yellow down there, ego management. Okay? Ego is our personal belief that we're good, right? Or that we're better than something, that we're hard workers. And ego's good to an extent. Next slide, please. Ego's really good to an extent because it's what drives you to do something. Right? If nobody had any ego, they had no self-esteem, they're not motivated to get things done. But we all know that one person that's cocky, not confident, that just walks in like they're the crap everywhere they go. They're like, all right, never fear, I have arrived. And then everybody kind of steps back and like, all right, let's see what this guy messes up this time. But we go back to that other slide. If you have the courage and the honesty to be, you know, hey ma'am, hey sir, maybe you should tone that back a little bit. You know, Some of the people in the chain of command are getting a little antsy. That takes some guts. But I personally would rather have somebody tell me that I was coming off cocky or boastful now, not 3 months later when half the squadron already hates me. Right? So the confidence side is being proud, not boastful. You know, I encountered this on a plane not too long ago. I was on an international flight heading over to Italy. And I was sitting next to this guy. We just carried on a conversation, right? Nothing crazy, just talking about life. You know, he was going over to visit some family. I was going over on tour with Rome's a cappella choir. We were going over to Italy to sing some songs. And later on, I found out he was an upper-level executive at a company that I admired, right? Didn't mention that the entire time we were talking. So he's walking off that plane, and I kind of put two and two together. And I was like, dang. You know, that guy's like super proud of what he does, but he wasn't like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so, CEO, executive of blah, 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 blank, you know, insert name here. Two totally different perceptions. If you're able to walk away from a conversation impacting people rather than trying to impress people, it'll totally change the way that people interact with you. Okay? And the final one here is something that we get caught in as followers all the time, especially if you're a subject matter expert or you're a high performer. You're one of those people that is a go-getter. They're constantly out chasing the next thing, constantly trying to improve. People want to give you credit, right? You get a coin, get an award, an achievement medal. You get a pat on the back, a 2-hour pass, something. They bring you up in front of the squadron and announce that you know, like when I got my bachelor's degree, they brought me up and announced that I got my bachelor's degree. I encountered this in Walmarts. If I just happen to stop to grab something quick on my way home from drill, people come up and say, thank you for your service, right? How awkward can that be sometimes? You just say thank you, right? Graciously accepting credit sometimes is more important for the person trying to give you credit than it is for you. It makes the squadron feel good to see one of their airmen up front getting an award. It makes that person thanking you for your service feel like they're doing their duty as citizens of the United States, thanking a military member. As awkward as it might make you feel, graciously accepting that credit is important for both you and them. Now, taking credit, that's something totally different. That's doing a task and expecting to get an award out of it. That's doing a task, and then when you don't get an achievement medal 3 months from them, going up to somebody in your chain of command and being like, hey, what the hell? Like, I thought I did a pretty good job back there. And then kind of sitting there staring, waiting for them to give you some type of congratulations. That's two totally different ways of interacting with both lateral, other followers and peers, and also people in your chain of command. You know, what kind of impression will it leave if you're the one that always shows up on time, always goes home, you know, whether it's late or they get the job done, they're constantly a hard worker, never really ask for anything in return. You know, it might take a little bit of time, but people are going to recognize you for that. People are going to know this is a person I can count on, whether I can give them something out of it or not. They know that whether they have something to offer you, that you're going to help them get something done. That reputation will take you way farther than somebody that has a lot of ribbons on their rack. Because you'll have influenced people, not impressed them. Slide. Okay, so ego management. There's a couple of things that I'll talk about as far as how exactly to manage your egos. Because sometimes we're not even aware of it, right? So the first step is learning how to detach. And I call this the Sims principle, okay? Everybody's played Sims or knows what Sims is at some point, right? I was talking to my little brother about it the other day, and he had no idea what it was. And that, you know, I'm only 25, and that made me feel super old. Okay, so that third person look, right? You're above yourself, looking down, watching yourself interact with another person. If you feel yourself, you feel that fight or flight syndrome kick in, like you're about to get defensive because someone's calling you out on something, take a step back. If you have to take a physical step back, is this really worth it? Is this not worth it? Is this, why am I feeling like this? Maybe there's some truth to what they're trying to critique you on. You got to be open to that. We all have those deficits. Maybe it's something you can work on and it's a hole you can fill. And they're offering you advice, but because you're getting defensive, you're not even going to hear it. Okay, how to draw the mentors in. I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier with the whole that's crap versus something else. I do this all the time in personnel. Now, if you're, master or above or an officer, like when your followers try to do this to you, just let them happen. Just let it happen. So, you walk up to somebody, and you have a plan. But you're not really sure how to draw in this person. They might be a little bit standoffish. They might not quite be the most interactive. But if you walk up to that person and you're like, hey, the way that we've been doing this for the last 3 months is horrible. I have a totally new plan that's going to completely increase efficiency by, 30, 40%. It's awesome, but the way that we've been doing it currently is horrible. We should probably relook at that. You're going to force that person into a corner where they have to detach and look at themselves and be like, okay, maybe we've been doing it bad, but I spent like 6 months coming up with that strat plan. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm just going to tell this person to book it and then not listen to what they have to say. Versus walking up to that person, and say you have a process you need to implement. Like, hey, sir, hey, ma'am. I'm a little bit new at this. I haven't been in charge of this program very long. I got a couple of ideas, but I could really use your expertise. I know that you spent, a really long time researching this topic and figuring some stuff out. If I could just steal 5 minutes of your time, just, 5-10 minutes, if you could just come take a look at this for me, this could potentially help. Now they're coming into you and they're all happy, like, yeah, this person's looking up to me like, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to come over and try to help them out. You drew them in as a mentor, right? But in your head, you're like, I'm going to plant the seed of my idea. And then hopefully they take it and run with it. And if they don't, if you fail once, try again. Now, the thing that you have to watch with that is if they decide to take credit for it, you can't be the one jumping up saying, hey, wait, that was my idea. Okay? I guarantee a lot of the people in your immediate lateral peer group will understand that you were the one that came up with that idea. But if you run up to the front and say, no, I took credit for this, not this person, then it becomes your word versus their word, creates a horrible dynamic, and everything starts to go downhill. If you patiently wait to graciously accept credit, it might not be the first idea you come up with to increase proficiency, it might not be the second. But down the line, you'll end up establishing that reputation that people know you're coming up with good ideas, you're increasing proficiency, and that you deserve to be recognized because you haven't been up till this point. And then you make this massive leap into a position that you may not think that you would have ever stepped into. Sometimes patience is a horrible waiting game. And impatience causes our egos to flare up. Right? But it's super important as followers to be able to manage those. And leaders. If you let your ego get the best of you as a leader, you no longer care about your followers. You care about your success, not the success of the group. And that's what we all joined the military for, was to watch the success of the cohesive unit of the United States of America against all other enemies, both foreign and domestic, right? All right, knowing your leader's weaknesses and strengths. I'll kind of pick on this a little bit. I jumped ahead of myself and talked about it earlier. But taking the time to understand your leaders, both their strong points, which can be public speaking. They're extroverted. They have a good reputation. They have degrees, good jobs. Their weak points may be when they do start talking to someone, they start looking at their watch because they know it's going to be a half-hour-long conversation. They have a secret hand signal for someone to call their phone and be like, oh, sorry, ma'am. Sorry, sir, I got to get out of here. There's an emergency, right? But if you know that that's one of the deficits, making your leaders aware of that, if you have that close relationship, will help their reputation with the rest of your group, and then inevitably increase the productivity of your squadron, or if you're on the civilian side, increase the productivity of your company. Because now you have that relationship with them where they know that you have discretion, that you're loyal, and that you're honest. And it puts you in a position to be able to help increase productivity across the entire group. All right. I have the core values posted up there just because it's something I hit on student flight all the time. I won't talk about them. But this last thing down here, what date was the Air Force established as a branch of the DoD? Who knows? What was that? 1947, right? What month? September 18th, 1947. Okay? Now, be honest, how many people knew that before we said it? Okay. Now, this is something that I really want to try to change the culture in the Air Force is heritage and understanding where we come from. Okay? As followers, we raised our right hands. That was my left one, right? We raised our right hands to join an organization because we believed in what it stood for. And it might have been just to go to school. That's morphed over time. You know, it might have been because we had no other option. But understanding where we came from, the people that came before us, the people that fought, died, bled in those uniforms, whether you're in the Corps. I mean, if you walk up to any Marine, they're going to know exactly where the Marine Corps was founded, you know, and every single piece of that history because they're proud of that heritage. And that's something that I see as a huge deficit in civilian corporations, hospital systems, and the military. And I think it can bring a lot of pride. I've seen it bring a lot of pride to my student fighters when I talk about where we come from, operations that the Air Force was involved in, things that we've done that were essential to the success of the United States. Can totally change their outlook over that one little thing, a date. Slide. All right, so now what? After these presentations, right, the important thing is to maintain authenticity. And you can't take, you know, just a cookie cutter package of stuff that the general talked about and stuff that I talked about, and then walk out and start implementing it right away. People are going to be like, who's this? You know, what'd you do with so-and-so? This is different. All right, docs do it to us all the time. They go to a conference, hear about some bolus being better than a different type of liquid, they come back, and now we're giving lactated ringers instead of normal saline. Nobody has any idea why we're doing that, but they know that it increases the success rate of a patient surviving during sepsis, right? Now, you know, don't quote the normal saline versus the LR because that was just an example, but if they would explain the why, then, you know, maybe people would be more prone to it. But you can't just go somewhere, come back, try to implement something right away. You have to figure out what works for you. Who are you as a leader and a follower? What is your why? Why are you here? You know, what do you want to accomplish? How are you going to do it? And who are you going to impact? Take little bits and pieces, watch the YouTube videos, Khan Academy. There's a lot of different places out there you can get resources. Put together a package that works for you, your personality type, and your position. So that kind of ties into the personal development. And I'll really end with this. I love this quote from Les Brown. I believe I have one more quote in here from Kurt Lewin. But this one, never let what you want to say get in the way of what they need to hear. Okay? That's super important, both followers and leaders. Sometimes we get so caught up in our egos that we believe we know everything. The day you believe that you know everything is the day that you realize you know nothing. Because people will start, like the general said, they'll believe that you have nothing to say, or they have nothing to say to you, because you'll already know the answer. That's a scary place to be. Slide. All right, so this is that quote from Kurt Lewin. If the group succeeds, you succeed. A person who has learned to see how much his own fate depends upon the success of the entire group will be eager to take over a fair share of the responsibility for that group's welfare. It's especially big in the military. The moment you realize, or your younger airmen realize, the trainees realize, before they even go to boot, that their success is extremely dictated upon the success of the group or the unit, the moment that your entry-level employee understands that profitability to the investors requires them to be so good at what they do on the floor that they don't have to use quality control as much to catch mistakes, that stock share will go up. Your profitability will go up. Your proficiency will go up because they understand that they are an integral piece of the organization. All right, thank you very much.